Welcome back, everyone. It's a roundup episode today, and I've got fantastic stories for you. Starfield, it's actually got some pretty major features coming. Also, Overwatch 2 is now no longer the worst game on Steam. Pretty incredible news. We've got something kind of significant going on at Respawn Entertainment and the woes of Square Enix. First, though, I think we've got to dive into the Starfield news. DLSS is coming to Starfield at some sort of undefined point. They were probably never going to let this just be a thing that modders do and sometimes charge for, but I think with the large public outcry and also modders doing what they can to get DLSS into the game, I think they certainly did feel the pressure. So, now that the game has been officially out for a week, they've got a plan for some immediate fixes. They've got their first major update, there's a small hotfix for some top issues. After that, though, Bethesda have said there are going to be regular updates that will have top community features. What are these? Well, one of them is brightness and contrast controls. Yes, it's insane that the game did not ship with that. Absolutely, it should have, and you can really feel that those would have, I mean, honestly, are kind of needed to get a good image. So that's a bit insane. Also, a HDR calibration menu. Of course, HDR because TVs only sometimes properly meet HDR standards, even when they advertise being HDR. You combine that with bad game support for HDR, and oftentimes HDR actually ends up being an awful customer experience, so that's good. Also, an FOV slider, so that'll be good. NVIDIA DLSS support for PC, 32:9 ultrawide support for PC, and an eat button for food. Gotta say though, right? The FOV slider, it's not bracketed as being PC. To me, that certainly is interesting because they did talk about improved performance and stuff like that, in addition to bug fixes. Of course, if you broaden out that FOV in console, you're going to have the game being a bit more, a bit harder to run. So I do wonder what that's going to be like. Certainly, though, the FOV on console, man, it is tight, and I'm glad that there's cross progression for this game. Now, they are aware of other issues, right? They said, even if we don't get to your requests immediately, we'd love to do it in the future, like city maps. Again, that city maps did not ship with this game is honestly kind of mental, but it is what it is. Clearly, they ended up having to ship. They've said, though, that any, blockers and stability bugs are the things they'll be focusing on first. So, overall, then, this is, it is good news. A lot of these features really should have been there for launch. I don't quite understand exactly why they weren't, especially since it doesn't seem the DLSS is the most impossible thing for them to have shipped for launch. I don't really know. That said, there are performance gains in other areas. As an example, the latest NVIDIA drivers have helped. They're actually saying that there should be a stable 5% improvement in performance for the 40 series cards. That's after only a week of tinkering, so that definitely is good. And of course, one thing that probably, I think, did go unsaid, but everybody should remember, AMD, they're running both consoles, right? So them having a closer relationship with AMD does make sense when, of course, they're going to be shipping on the Xbox consoles, right? Because I think, both Xbox and PS5, they're running AMD tech, right? And interestingly, Starfield being pretty good on console is actually actively moving sales. Of course, this cannot be extrapolated worldwide or anything, but the Xbox Series S and X UK sales have jumped 76% on the launch of Starfield. Now, that's 76% of a number that probably was not overly high to begin with, yes, but it certainly is good. And while the week of the 2nd was their best of the year, actually the week of the 9th, that's their 4th best. So this really is shifting units for Xbox, meaning, Phil Spencer was probably right. Starfield is not some 11 out of 10 game that is causing people to sell their PS5 and properly jump ship, but it clearly is meaning that people are choosing now to pick up an Xbox, or perhaps are even getting one in addition, which is, fairly interesting, I suppose. And I guess especially in a world where it's a pretty damn challenging game to run in PC. And by the way, and especially off the back of the recent Unity video that we did, a lot more people are coming to the channel. We had 700 new subscribers yesterday. So if you watch the content regularly, be sure to subscribe. Basically, me and my team are here to bring you gaming related news and entertainment just about every single day for as long as possible. So, subscribe for more of that. that being said, let's hop over to our next story, which is Overwatch 2. It's no longer the worst game on Steam. Of course, are we going to say that Overwatch is literally the worst game on Steam? No, we're not. It's just the review bomb. Now, the review bomb, yes, it's a bunch of people in the West who are angry about the state of Overwatch 2. It also, and it's got to be remembered, it's also people in China on the global version of Steam who are expressing their disappointment in the state of Blizzard services and games in China. As in, there isn't one, because the deal with NetEase fell through, and really quite shockingly, a new deal hasn't been made to get games like World of Warcraft back to the Chinese audience. I think they're having to play on Taiwanese servers now. Yeah, it's a kind of insane situation. So a lot of those downvotes were actually, because you can sort by language in Steam. I'd recommend you do that and swap languages and start doing some translating, because yeah, it's a lot of people from China who are rightly pissed off that I suppose Blizzard trying to get a better deal, Activision Blizzard perhaps trying to get a better deal, that ultimately cost them access to their accounts in their game. That being said, this time, of course, amazing decision maker Take-Two Interactive has actually claimed their latest gaming success, NBA 2K24. And it really is a yearly theme. A new NBA game comes out and it gets utterly review bombed. So both games are actually tied right now for their overall user rating at 10% positives, but NBA 2K24's is much more concentrated negatively in a small population size, and that is kind of giving it its edge. Now, in terms of this just being another sports game, it's broadly fine. 79 top critic average, 70% of critics recommending. This time though, it is a lot worse in PC. PC players have got a very different experience to those on PS5 and the Xbox Series consoles, because the PC version seemingly has not got any of the technical improvements that are actually existing on the console version. And of course, as is the standard for many of these sports games, players are generally frustrated that they're barely evolving from year to year anyway. So not only is it barely evolving, but the evolutions that have happened to the consoles are not making not really making their way onto PC. There's also significant complaints about the way that the systems in the game are encouraging long grinding for anything that you want. What could that lead to? I don't know. Maybe it could lead to the game being riddled with microtransactions, which, yes, of course it is. Here are all of your NBA 2K24 My Team points in a system that is, of course, operating rather like FIFA Ultimate Team. So basically, this is a PC port that is disappointing, a game that is an iterative update and still has all of the bullshit microtransactions that one would expect. Perfect recipe for something sliding just under Overwatch 2 on the Steam negative review rankings. Next time, let's talk about the leader of the new Jedi games actually leaving the company. This was broken by Bloomberg, and yes, Stig Amundsen, he's left EA and Respawn Entertainment. Now, he had a 25-year career in the games industry. Most notably, he was the creative director at Santa Monica Studio on God of War 3. So that's kind of crazy. Then that all went quite well when he joined Respawn and began working as the director of Jedi Fallen Order and Jedi Survivor, both pretty damn terrific games. And in interviews as recently as March, he actually said that this is really a series of games that they consider to be a trilogy, one that pretty much has like the tacit blessing of LucasArts as well. But now he's off to do something else before the third game is properly underway. Here's what was said. After careful thought and consideration, Amundsen has decided to leave Respawn, pursue other adventures, and we wish him the best of luck. Veteran Respawn leaders will be stepping up to guide the team as they continue their work on Jedi Survivor. We've got no info on where he's going, but he is the guy who led EA on 2 financially and critically successful single-player games. I imagine he's a hot commodity. Also, I'd say in terms of like games production, it seems that they were able to just get those 2 games like made in, good time, kind of good efficiency. So he seems to also have the production chops as well, or I suppose at the very least knows how to get a team of people around him who have got good production chops. Because yes, there are AAA games that take a lot longer to make than the Jedi games. Think about where are Rocksteady? Where have Rocksteady's games gone? Yes, things like that. I imagine he's got a stack of money. Now, is this all going to be doom and gloom? I would say likely no. This seems like a guy who's had a very successful career, who's very competent at his job, who's probably going to some sort of new opportunity that he's very excited about. Take a look at, say, God of War Ragnarok. it doesn't have the same game director as the first new God of War, right? So absolutely, I'm not worried here. It's still in large going to be made by the same game, and I imagine people will have been decently trained up to take over the reins. Though I suppose it is some change, and change can be a bit scary, especially when it's things that we do love. Now, Square Enix financial analyst woes. Man, Square Enix are such a fascinating... They're a loopy, wacky, crazy bunch, and they are so fun to follow. So, Square Enix has lost $2 billion in market value since the release of FF16. However, the situation is not particularly clear-cut. FF16 is not necessarily the cause of this drop. Instead, it's the realization that Final Fantasy games alone won't really improve the financial performance of a studio that has had multiple years of mixed success. Final Fantasy is the thing that they have, and not every single Final Fantasy has, blown the doors off in terms of like sales and critical acclaim. So if they can't translate that formula over to other titles, like Forspoken, then investors are obviously going to be worried. Now, the analysis here is rather obvious. The analysis is, how about you guys release fewer games, but they are better, and you make more money with big, chunky Metacritic scores. That is the sort of thing that you would expect to hear from a financial analyst. But the reasoning for the Square Enix problems given by sources to Bloomberg, they're actually a lot more interesting. Listen to this. Current and former Square Enix employees pin the blame for that on the company's approach of making every game project a single producer's fiefdom, right? A lot of the people who follow Japanese games, yes, they'll be following directors. Like, they're a very, I think, like, top-down kind of director-driven, culture in terms of how they make games. And perhaps people are now seeing this as a little bit of a worry. Some people would even say, like, yes, FF16. Like, FF16 is really good at some things, not good at other things, and maybe could have been better if it had more effort. Also, you look at FF14 in its post-Endwalker, doesn't seem like it's been able to really engage players as much. That's all Creative Business Unit 3. So is there perhaps a worry that, like, yes, they have all these big successes around Creative Business Unit 3, but what happens if you're relying on the same people to have all your big hits? Are they going to be stretched too thin? That's the sort of thing somebody would perhaps likely worry about. So in short, there seems to be an environment built on a certain culture of auteur-style leadership that often does lead to great games like, say, Creative Business Unit 3 and Yoshi P, but also has led to notable failures, right? Because basically, if it's a bunch of auteurs and you don't have great central coordination of like your overall strategy, stuff can end up being a little bit of a mess. For this year, per Alex Donaldson, this control isn't just about game direction and development experimentation that causes delays. It's also things like disconnected creators all deciding to release highly similar games at the same time so they cannibalize each other. There's a lack of central strategy. And I suppose, yeah, you can see that. Of course, it's not the easiest problem for Square Enix to solve, and they're certainly doing goofy things right now. As an example, there's a gacha version of Final Fantasy VII. Yeah. Should we do a video on it? Sometimes it is fun to just, like, peer into the depths of hell. But yes, it is a full-on FF7, like, single-player... Is it single-player? I forget. But anyway, it's basically, go play Final Fantasy VII. It's a gacha game now. And they did it. Madness. Okay, that's it for today. Be sure to subscribe and all of that good stuff. If you want to support what we're doing, you can buy, as an example, an art book for our first game, The Pale Beyond, which is on store.bellular.games. Of course, subscribe for more. I'm pretty much here daily, and certainly been looking at what the team have been doing, and man, we have got some great stories coming out for you. So, thank you for everything, and I'll see you in the next video.